The forest was silent as Laura Blake walked up the narrow path to her cabin. The only sounds came from her boots on the dirt and the occasional bird call. She carried a heavy backpack filled with food to last the next 2 weeks. Her job as a wildlife photographer meant she often spent long periods alone in remote places, and she liked it that way. The cabin appeared between the trees as the path curved around a large boulder. It was small but sturdy, with a wooden porch and a metal roof that glinted. In the afternoon sun, Laura had inherited it from her uncle, who taught her everything about survival in the wilderness. She felt at home here more than anywhere else as she approached the cabin. Laura noticed something strange. The door was slightly open. She always locked it before leaving. She stopped and listened but heard nothing unusual. Slowly, she reached into her side pocket and pulled out her hunting knife. Something was wrong. Laura moved quietly, placing each step carefully. She crept onto the porch, avoiding the creaky board in the middle. The door moved slightly in the gentle breeze. Inside, the cabin looked undisturbed. The small living area with its worn couch and wooden table seemed normal. Her framed photos still hung on the UE, walls exactly as she left them. She moved through the cabin, checking each room. Nothing seemed missing or out of place. But when she reached the bedroom, she froze. There was mud on the floor, fresh mud in a strange pattern, almost like footprints, but not human. They were too large, with an odd shape Laura had never seen before. A soft thump came from outside. Laura spun around, knife ready. She peered through the bedroom window but saw nothing. The forest remained still. She took a deep breath and decided to check the small storage shed behind the cabin. Maybe an animal had broken in. Laura stepped outside and walked slowly around the cabin. The shed door hung open, swinging slightly. The lock was broken. Something had torn it off with considerable force. Laura approached carefully, her knife held firmly. A strange smell hit her nose, unlike anything she had encountered before. Something between metal and flowers. She pushed the door open wider and gasped. Huddled in the corner among her gardening tools and spare equipment was a figure. It looked almost human, but wrong. The proportions were off, the limbs too long. The skin had a bluish tint that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. The creature looked up at her with large almond-shaped eyes that were completely silver with no pupils or whites. Its face was human-like, but with high cheekbones and no visible ears or nose. Just smooth skin where those features should be. It wore what looked like a tight-fitting suit made of a material. Laura couldn't identify Laura, and the creature stared at each other, neither moving. The creature seemed as surprised to see her as she was to see it. Laura noticed it was trembling. Whether from fear or cold, she couldn't tell. After what felt like hours, the creature slowly raised its hand in what seemed like a greeting gesture. Laura lowered her knife slightly but remained alert. The creature had no obvious weapons, but she couldn't be sure it wasn't dangerous. "Do you understand me?" Laura asked, keeping her voice calm and even. The creature tilted its head to one side. Then it touched its throat and made a series of clicking sounds. Laura shook her head. "No English," she said, pointing to her mouth. The creature seemed to understand. It looked around the sheet and spotted a bag of soil Laura kept for her small vegetable garden. It reached over slowly and stuck a long finger into the soil. Then it began to draw on the concrete floor. Laura watched as the creature drew what looked like a crude picture of a star, then an arrow, and then something that resembled a ship. The message was clear enough. It came from space. Laura pointed up to the sky. "You came from up there. From another planet?" The creature nodded, an oddly human gesture. It continued drawing, adding a picture of what looked like its ship with smoke or flames coming from it. Then it drew mountains similar to the ones surrounding Laura's cabin you crashed. Laura said, understanding dawning, "Your ship is damaged." The creature nodded again. This time it pointed to itself, then drew a small group of similar-looking figures. Then it drew what looked like other beings with different shapes, holding what Laura assumed were weapons. The creature crossed these figures out, violently. Laura understood the basic story. The creature was running from something or someone dangerous. Its ship had crashed in the mountains and now it was hiding. Perhaps wounded and certainly afraid. Laura made a decision. She put her knife away and held out her hand palm, up in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. The creature hesitated, then slowly extended its own hand. It had 6 fingers each longer and more slender than human fingers. They touched briefly. The creature's skin felt cool and smooth almost, like silk. Laura pointed to herself. "Laura," she said clearly. The creature touched its chest and made a sound like water flowing over stones. "I can't say that," Laura said with a small smile. "I think I'll call you Blue because of your skin. Is that okay?" The creature seemed to understand it. Nodded again. Laura gestured toward the cabin. "Come inside, you can stay there. It's safer than this shed, and probably more comfortable." Blue stood up, revealing its full height. It was at least 7 feet tall, towering over Laura. Its movements were fluid and graceful despite its strange proportions. It followed Laura to the cabin, moving cautiously as if expecting a trap. Inside, Laura pointed to the couch. "You can sit there. I need to close the door and windows, make sure no one sees you." Blue sat awkwardly on the couch, its long limbs not quite fitting comfortably on the human-sized furniture. It watched Laura as she secured the cabin, pulling curtains closed and locking the door. Laura wasn't sure what to do next. She had 1,000 questions, but no way to ask them. She noticed Blue was still trembling. "Are you cold?" she asked, miming shivering. Blue nodded. Laura retrieved a blanket from the bedroom and offered it. Blue took it with what seemed like gratitude, wrapping it around its shoulders. Laura moved to the kitchen area. "I have food. Are you hungry?" She pantomimed eating. Blue touched its stomach and nodded again. Laura wasn't sure what an alien would eat, but she had to try something. She took out some apples, bread, and cheese, placing them on the table. She gestured for Blue to join her. Blue approached cautiously, examining the food. It picked up an apple, sniffing it. Then, to Laura's surprise, it bit into its skin, and all it made a sound that might have been pleasure, and quickly devoured the rest of the apple. "Well, at least we know you can eat our food," Laura said, smiling. "That makes things easier." As Blue ate, Laura studied it more carefully. In the better light of the cabin, she could see what looked like injuries on its arms and torso. Dark patches that might have been bruises or cuts. The creature had been through something traumatic, that much was clear. What Laura didn't know was how long Blue would stay, or what had been chasing it, or if those same pursuers would come looking here. She glanced out the window at the darkening forest. The cabin suddenly felt very isolated, very vulnerable. "What have I gotten myself into?" she wondered. The morning light filtered through the curtains as Laura woke up. She sat up quickly, remembering the events of yesterday. Blue. The alien. She looked around her bedroom but found herself alone. Had it all been a strange dream? Laura pulled on a sweater and stepped into the main room of the cabin. There on the couch, curled up in an impossibly compact position, was Blue. The blanket rose and fell with steady breathing. Laura watched for a moment, still amazed by the creature's presence. She moved quietly to the kitchen and began making coffee. The smell must have roused Blue as the alien uncurled its long limbs and sat up. Those silver eyes fixed on Laura with what seemed like curiosity. "Morning," Laura said softly. "Did you sleep okay?" Blue nodded and made a series of musical sounds. Laura realized the alien was trying to communicate in its own language. "Sorry, I still can't understand you," Laura said. She pointed to her coffee cup. "Want some?" Blue shook its head. Then it stood up and walked to the window. Peering cautiously through the curtains, the alien seemed worried. Laura joined Blue at the window. "Are you looking for something out there? Are you worried someone will find you?" Blue turned to Laura and nodded emphatically. Then it made a sweeping gesture toward the mountains beyond the cabin. "Your ship." Laura guessed, "Is it far from here?" Blue held up 4 long fingers. 4 miles, Laura asked. Blue nodded. 4 miles away in the mountains. Laura considered this. She knew these woods well, having explored them extensively during her photography trips. She had a topographical map of the area. She retrieved it from her equipment bag and spread it on the table. "Show me where." Blue. "Where is your ship?" Blue studied the map for a moment, then pointed to a remote area deep in the mountains. Laura knew the spot. It was a small valley surrounded by steep cliffs, difficult to access but beautiful. She had photographed wildlife there several times. "That's at least a day's hike," Laura said. "Do you need to go there?" "Do you need something from your ship?" Blue nodded again with more urgency. It pantomimed what looked like repairing something. Then it pointed to itself and made a zooming gesture with its hand. "You need to fix your ship," Laura realized. "So you can leave." The alien confirmed this with another nod. Laura considered their options. The journey would be difficult, especially if they needed to avoid being seen. Getting to the valley required traversing exposed ridgelines where they could easily be spotted. But Blue clearly needed to reach its ship. "We should wait until dark," Laura decided, pointing out the window and then to the clock. "It's safer at night. Less chance of someone seeing us." Blue seemed to understand but looked disappointed. It pointed to the sky and made a worried sound. Laura didn't know what that meant but guessed Blue was concerned about its pursuers. Whoever or whatever had chased the alien to Earth might still be looking, while they waited for nightfall. Laura tried to learn more about Blue. The alien was a quick study, grasping the names of objects around the cabin with remarkable speed. By midday, they had established a basic system of communication. Laura learned that Blue came from a planet far beyond our solar system. It was part of a scientific expedition studying various worlds. Blue drew pictures showing it was a biologist of sorts, collecting samples of plant life from different planets. When Laura asked about who was chasing Blue, the alien became agitated. It drew figures that looked militaristic with weapons and aggressive postures. Blue explained through drawings that these beings were from another species that considered Blue's kind enemies. They attacked Blue's research vessel, forcing it to flee the ship. Was damaged in the pursuit, causing it to crash on Earth. As evening approached, Laura packed a backpack with essentials, flashlights, food, water, first aid supplies, and her camera. She couldn't resist the opportunity to document this encounter, though. She had no intention of sharing the photos with anyone. Blue watched her preparations with interest, occasionally pointing to items that might be useful. Laura noticed the alien seemed to have a deep understanding of survival needs. When darkness fell, they set out. Blue wore Laura's spare hiking clothes, which were too small but better than nothing. A hat helped conceal its unusual features. They moved silently through the forest, Blue displaying impressive night vision, guiding Laura around obstacles she could barely see. They hiked for hours, following game trails and stream beds to avoid leaving obvious tracks. Laura was in good shape, but Blue's endurance was remarkable. The alien moved with efficiency, never seeming to tire. Around midnight, they stopped to rest by a small stream. Laura offered Blue some food, which it accepted gratefully. The alien had taken a liking to apples and dried fruit, consuming them with obvious pleasure. "How long have you been on Earth?" Laura asked, knowing Blue couldn't answer fully but hoping for some indication. Blue held up 7 fingers. 7 days. Laura guessed. Blue nodded. They continued their journey as clouds moved across the moon, plunging the forest into deeper darkness. Laura relied more on Blue's guidance. As visibility worsened, the terrain grew steeper as they began climbing into the mountains. Suddenly, Blue froze, raising a hand in warning. Laura stopped, immediately straining her ears. A low mechanical hum drifted through the trees. It was faint, but definitely not a natural sound. Blue pulled Laura under the dense branches of a pine tree, pressing a finger to where its mouth would be, if it had one. Laura held her breath as a bright light swept through the forest about 100 yards away. It moved methodically, scanning the ground and trees. The light had an unnatural blue tint to it, definitely not from any standard flashlight or searchlight. Blue trembled slightly next to her, its silver eyes reflecting the distant light. The alien was terrified. Laura realized whatever was searching for them was connected to Blue's pursuers. The light continued its sweep, getting closer to their hiding place. Laura could now make out a small drone-like object floating between the trees. It moved, with precision, following some kind of search pattern. Blue slowly reached into the pouch of the hoodie it wore and pulled out a small device about the size of a coin. It pressed something on the device, which emitted a soft pulse of energy. The drone immediately changed direction, moving away from them as if distracted by something else. Blue waited until the light disappeared completely before motioning that it was safe to move. "What was that?" Laura whispered, gesturing to the small device in Blue's hand. The alien made a gesture mimicking the drone, then shook its head. It had somehow interfered with the drone's sensors. They resumed their journey, moving faster now with greater urgency. The encounter with the drone had confirmed Laura's fears. They were being hunted. As dawn approached, they finally reached the edge of the small valley Blue had indicated on the map. They crouched behind rocks, looking down into the mist-shrouded depression. Blue pointed excitedly. At first Laura saw nothing, but as the morning light strengthened, she made out an unusual shape among the trees, something metallic and sleek partially buried in the earth. Blue's ship. They needed to get down there, but the valley sides were steep. Laura studied the terrain, looking for the safest route. There was a narrow game trail winding down about 50 yards to their right. It would be exposed, but it was their best option. As they prepared to make their descent, Blue suddenly stiffened. Looking up, Laura saw what had alarmed. The alien, a black aircraft unlike any she had ever seen, was circling high above the valley. Blue's pursuers had found the ship. Laura pulled Blue back into the cover of the trees as the black aircraft circled lower. Its design was unlike anything she had ever seen. No visible wings or rotors, just a smooth oval shape that moved with impossible precision. It made almost no sound, just a faint electrical hum that made the hair on her arm stand up. "We need to hide," Laura whispered, pointing to a dense thicket of undergrowth. They crawled backward, keeping low until they reached better cover. From their position, they could still observe the valley and Blue's ship. The black craft hovered directly above the crashed ship. A beam of light extended downward, bathing the vessel in a greenish glow. Blue made a soft, distressed sound beside her. 3 figures descended from the craft, floating down through the beam of light. They were humanoid, but wrong somehow. Their proportions seemed slightly off, and they moved with an unnatural fluidity. They wore dark suits that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their heads were covered by helmets with opaque visors. The figures began examining Blue's ship, scanning it with devices that emitted colored lights. One of them found the entrance hatch and disappeared inside, while the others continued their exterior inspection. Blue trembled, watching the scene with obvious distress. It clutched the small device it had used earlier to divert the drone. Laura noticed the alien was pressing buttons on it frantically. "What are you doing?" Laura whispered. Blue pointed to its ship, then to the device, then made a series of gestures that Laura interpreted as some kind of remote controller signal. "You're trying to access your ship remotely," Laura guessed. Blue nodded emphatically, continuing to work the device. Suddenly, an alarm sounded. From the ship in the valley, the 2 figures outside turned quickly, looking around. The third emerged from the hatch, all of them now on alert. A moment later, a panel opened on the side of the ship, and something shot out like a small missile. It arced through the air and landed in the forest about 100 yards from where Laura and Blue were hiding. Blue's device emitted a soft chime. The alien immediately stood up, tugging at Laura's sleeve and pointing in the direction where the object had landed. Figures below had noticed the launched object as well. They were now scanning the forest edges, clearly looking for its landing site. One pointed up the slope in their general direction. "We need to move," Laura said. They ran crouching low through the underbrush, heading toward where the mysterious object had landed. Behind them, the black craft rose from its hovering position and began to sweep the forest edge with a wide scanning beam. Blue led the way, moving with surprising speed despite the rough terrain. They reached a small clearing, and the alien immediately began searching the ground. Its long fingers swept aside fallen leaves and branches, looking for whatever had been ejected from the ship. Laura kept watch, shifting nervously from one foot to another. The sound of the craft was getting closer. They had minutes at most before it would be upon them. Blue made an excited sound. It had found something, a small metallic cylinder about the size of a thermos. The alien clutched it too, its chest like a precious treasure. Then it grabbed Laura's hand and pulled her deeper into the forest, away from the approaching craft. They ran for what seemed like hours, though it could only have been minutes. The forest grew denser, providing better cover. Blue seemed to have a destination in mind. leading Laura confidently, despite having never been in these woods before. They finally stopped in a small cave formed by fallen boulders. The space was just large enough for them to crouch inside, hidden from aerial view. Blue immediately opened the cylinder. It contained what looked like tools and small devices of alien design. Laura caught her breath watching as Blue examined the contents. One by one, the aliens selected various instruments. The technology was like nothing Laura had seen, sleek and somehow alive, almost organic in its design. Blue held up a small disc. It looked like a smooth river stone, but with a faint glow emanating from its center. The alien pointed to itself then. Laura then made a series of gestures toward its own head. "I don't understand," Laura said. Blue picked up a fallen leaf and placed the disc against it. The leaf immediately changed color, cycling through various hues before settling on a deep blue. The alien then touched its throat and made those musical sounds again. "Wait," Laura said, beginning to understand. "Is that some kind of translator?" Blue nodded enthusiastically. It placed the disc against its own neck, where it seemed to meld with the skin. A moment later, Blue spoke. "Can you understand me now?" The voice was strange, musical, and slightly mechanical, but the words were clear. "English," Laura gasped. "Yes, I can understand you," she said, astonished. Blue made a gesture that might have been a smile, though its face lacked the proper muscles for human expressions. "This is a universal translator. It analyzes brainwaves and converts thoughts to local language. Not perfect, but functional." "Who are you?" Laura asked. "And who are those things hunting you?" "My name is..." She paused, the translator seeming to struggle with the alien sounds. "In your language it would be something like Solaria. I am a biological researcher from a system you would call Lyra, and those hunting you hunters." Solaria, said her, silver eyes darkening. "They are mercenaries from the Orion systems. My people and theirs have been in conflict for generations. They want my research and my ship. The technology it contains would be valuable to them." "What research?" Solaria hesitated. "I was studying life forms on underdeveloped worlds, specifically plant life with regenerative properties. Your Earth has remarkable biodiversity. Many species here have potential for medicine and other applications. My mission was peaceful observation, only not interference." The distant hum of the craft grew louder again. "They were still being pursued. We cannot stay here," Solaria said, gathering her tools. "The hunters have technology that can detect my biological signature at close range. We must keep moving." She held up another device from the cylinder. "This will mask our presence temporarily, but its power is limited." "What about your ship?" Laura asked. "Can you repair it?" Solaria shook her head. "Not without access to it, and not with the hunters guarding it. My only hope is to contact my people, but I need a stronger transmission device." "The one in that cylinder is damaged," Laura thought quickly. There was a radio tower on the mountain to the north, used by the Park Service for communications. It was powerful enough to reach satellites. Maybe it could be modified. "There might be a way," she said. "I know a place with transmission equipment. It's about 10 miles from here. A difficult journey through rough country, but I know the route." Solaria considered. Your technology is primitive by my standards, but with modifications it might work. The hunters will monitor all transmissions. We would need to be quick before they traced it." A plan was forming in Laura's mind. The tower was automated, no permanent staff. She had access to the facility through her work with the Wildlife Service. If they could reach it, modify the equipment and send Solaria's message, they might have a chance. But first they needed to lose their pursuers. The hunter's craft was growing, closer, systematically searching the forest. Solaria activated the masking device. A field of energy briefly surrounded them, then faded, though Laura could still feel a slight tingling on her skin. "This will hide us for 6 of your hours," Solaria explained. "After that, the hunters will be able to track me again. We must use this time to put distance between us and them." Laura nodded, leading the way through the forest. The path ahead would be challenging, but she knew these mountains better than any hunter. From the stars, that would have to be their advantage as they moved deeper into the wilderness. Laura realized her life had changed forever. Nothing would be the same after this encounter with Solaria. Whether they succeeded or failed the knowledge, That humanity was not alone in the universe would stay with her. The morning sun filtered through the trees as they climbed higher into the mountains. The radio tower was still many hours away. But for now they were safe. The hunters would not find them yet. The mountain path grew steeper as Laura led Solaria higher into the wilderness. The alien moved with grace. Despite the rough terrain, her long limbs easily navigating obstacles that Laura had to scramble over. They had been hiking for hours, putting distance between themselves and the hunters. "We should rest," Laura said, stopping in a small clearing. Her legs ached and her lungs burned from the exertion. The radio tower was still miles away on the next ridge. Solaria nodded, scanning their surroundings. "With those silver eyes, this location is acceptable." She sat down on a fallen log, her movements fluid, yet somehow not quite human. The translator disc on her neck pulsed softly as she spoke. Laura took off her backpack and retrieved water and energy bars. She offered one to Solaria, who examined it curiously before taking a small bite. The alien had been fascinated by human food, tasting everything Laura offered, though she claimed to need little sustenance. "How long until we reach this transmission?" Station Solaria asked. "Another 5 hours of hiking." Laura estimated. "If we push hard, maybe more. The terrain gets rougher from here." Solaria checked one of her devices. "The masking field will fail in approximately 4 hours. We must be at your station before then, or the hunters will locate us." Laura nodded, taking a long drink of water. "Tell me more about your people," she said. "What are they like?" Solaria was silent for a moment, as if considering how to explain. "We are explorers and scientists. My species values knowledge above all else. We have studied thousands of worlds, but we rarely interfere. We believe each world should develop naturally without outside influence, like Star Trek," Laura said with a small smile. When Solaria looked confused, she added, "It's a human story, about space explorers with similar rules." "Ah yes," Solaria said, the translator. "Giving me your cultural context, now I understand. The comparison has merit, though. Our technology is far beyond what your stories imagine. We have been space travelers for 50,000 of your years." The concept was difficult for Laura to grasp. A civilization that was exploring the stars when humans were still living in caves. What must Earth look like to such advanced beings? Primitive, childlike, and the hunters, Laura asked. "What do they want?" Domination Solaria said simply. "They believe advanced species have the right to control less developed worlds, to harvest resources and technology. They see my people as weak for our policy of non-interference." She paused, looking up at the sky visible through the tree canopy. "The hunters belong to a coalition of aggressive species. They have conquered many worlds. Those they cannot defeat through force. They infiltrate slowly, sometimes taking generations to assume control. Are they here on Earth already?" Laura asked, suddenly alarmed by the implication. Solaria shook her head. "No, your world is remote, far from the major transit routes. That is why I chose it for research. The hunters followed me here. They have no interest in Earth itself, only in capturing me and my ship." But she hesitated. "But what Laura prompted, if they cannot find me, they may expand their search. They might notice your species and report back. The coalition is always looking for new worlds to exploit." The thought sent a chill through Laura. The idea that Earth might be noticed by these hostile aliens because of her involvement with Solaria was terrifying. But what choice did she have? Leave Solaria to be captured? Or worse, we need to keep moving, Laura said, standing up. "The sooner we get to the radio tower, the sooner you can contact your people." They continued their journey through the increasingly rugged terrain. Laura led them along game trails and through narrow passes, avoiding the more open ridgelines where they might be spotted. The day grew warmer, the sun high overhead, casting short shadows. Solaria moved with increasing urgency, checking her devices frequently. The hunters were still searching through the masking field, continued to hide them. At one point they heard the distant hum of the alien craft passing over the valley below. They froze, hiding under a rocky overhang until the sound faded. "Tell me about your world." Solaria said as they climbed a particularly steep section. It seems very diverse. Your life forms are fascinating. Laura smiled despite their situation. My world has problems, she admitted. Too many to count. But it's beautiful too. It's the only home humans have ever known. We haven't mastered space, travel like your people. You will someday, Solaria said. If you survive long enough, many species destroy themselves before reaching the stars. It is a common pattern. The technological adolescence, as my people call it. A dangerous time, Laura thought. About climate change, nuclear weapons, all the ways humans seem determined to harm their planet and each other. Is that why you don't interfere? She asked. To let us make our own mistakes. Partially, Solaria confirmed interference rarely helps, it often makes situations worse. Species must find their own path. But there are some among my people who believe limited guidance might be justified for promising worlds. Are we promising, Laura? Asked. Solaria made that strange almost smile again. You are interesting, she said. Your species has great potential and great flaws. Remarkable creativity alongside surprising cruelty. Your art and music are unique among worlds I have studied. They reached the top of a ridge, and Laura pointed to a distant peak where metal towers glinted in the sunlight. That's it, she said. The radio station. It's still a few hours away, but at least we can see it now. Solaria studied it, then checked her devices. The masking field is failing faster than anticipated, she said with concern. We have less than 2 hours before the hunters can track us again. Laura looked at the distance they still had to cover. We won't make it in time, she realized. The path ahead included a steep descent into a valley followed by an even steeper climb. Up the opposite side, Solaria seemed to reach the same conclusion. She reached into her pouch and removed another device. This one looked like a small sphere with intricate patterns etched into its surface. I have one option remaining, she said, holding up the sphere. It is a short-range transportation device, what your stories might call a teleporter. It has enough power for a single use. Laura stared at the device. Transportation. As in beam. Us up, Solaria nodded. I had hoped to save this for an emergency. It requires significant energy and leaves a trace the hunters can detect. But we have no choice now. We must reach the station before the masking field fails completely. Can it take us both? Laura asked. Yes, if we maintain physical contact. The range is limited approximately 3 of your miles. But that should be sufficient. Laura looked at the distant radio tower. It seemed impossible that they could simply transport there like something from science fiction. But everything about Solaria was impossible. The alien held out her hand. I need you to guide me to the exact location once we arrive. I cannot operate your equipment without help. Laura took Solaria's hand, feeling the cool, smooth skin against her own. The alien's fingers wrapped around, hers with gentle strength. Prepare yourself, Solaria warned. The sensation is disorienting for those unaccustomed to it. Close your eyes and focus on breathing steadily. Laura did as instructed, squeezing her eyes shut. She felt Solaria activate the device. A high-pitched tone filled her ears and her skin tingled as if charged with electricity. The ground seemed to fall away beneath her feet and her stomach lurched. She was floating weightless in a void. Then suddenly solid ground was under her feet. Again Laura staggered, feeling nauseated and dizzy. She would have fallen if Solaria hadn't steadied her. Breathe deeply, the alien instructed. The feeling will pass. Shortly. Laura took several deep breaths, her head gradually clearing. She opened her eyes and gasped. They were standing beside the radio tower on the mountain peak. The journey of hours had happened in seconds. It worked, she said, in amazement. Solaria looked weaker, the transport seeming to have affected her as well. We must hurry, she said. The hunters will have detected the energy signature. They will come quickly. Laura led the way to the small equipment building beside the tower. She punched a code into the keypad by the door and it swung open, revealing racks of communications equipment. The station was automated with no human operators, a relay point for Park Service communications. Solaria examined the equipment with interest. This is primitive, but the basic principles are universal, she said, reaching into her pouch for tools. Laura watched as the alien began modifying the radio transmitter, connecting it to one of her own devices. The technology gap between them had never been more apparent. Solaria's six-fingered hands moved with precision, rewiring and reconfiguring the human equipment. From outside came the sound they both dreaded, the low hum of the hunter's craft. The masking field had failed, and the teleportation had led their pursuers straight to them. They found us, Laura said, moving to the small window. The black oval craft was approaching fast, only minutes away. Solaria worked faster. I need more time, she said. The transmission must be precisely calibrated, or my people will not receive it. Laura made a quick decision. Stay here. Finish the transmission. It'll distract them. Before Solaria could object, Laura grabbed her camera from her backpack and rushed outside. The camera was her most valuable possession, expensive and powerful with a telephoto lens. If the hunters truly wanted to remain hidden from humanity, evidence of their existence would be a powerful deterrent. She ran toward a cluster of boulders away from the building. The black craft was closer now, descending toward the radio tower. Laura raised her camera and began taking photos. The powerful lens capturing clear images of the alien vessel. The hunter's craft hovered menacingly as Laura pressed herself against the rocks. Her camera clutched tightly to her chest. She had succeeded in drawing them away from Solaria, but now she was trapped. A beam of energy scorched the ground nearby, sending small rocks flying. Laura flinched as a shadow fell over her, expecting the worst, but it was Solaria. The alien moved with incredible speed, pulling Laura deeper into the cover of the boulders. The transmission is complete, Solaria said, her silver eyes reflecting the sunlight. My people have received our coordinates. They are sending help. But the hunters know this too. They will not leave witnesses now. Another energy beam hit closer, shaking the ground. Laura felt the heat of it singeing her hair. How long until your people arrive, she asked. Hours, perhaps, Solaria replied. We must survive until then. The alien reached into her pouch and removed her last device. It resembled a small pistol, though unlike any weapon Laura had seen. Its surface shifted, colors like oil on water. This is a disruption tool, Solaria explained. It can temporarily disable their craft. It is not designed as a weapon, but it is all we have. The hunter's craft was circling, tightening its pattern, searching for them systematically. Soon they would have nowhere to hide. Solaria studied the craft, waiting for the right moment. The hunters must be incredibly eager to risk such open pursuit. She said, They know my people will respond. They are desperate. Laura remembered her camera. She had clear images of the alien craft, evidence that could expose them to humanity. I have photos, she said. Maybe we can use that. Solaria considered this. The hunters fear exposure almost as much as they want. My research. Humans are not supposed to know of other species yet. The coalition has rules even they must follow. A plan formed in Laura's mind. We need to get to the radio tower building. There's broadcasting equipment there. Not just the transmitter you modified. We could send these photos. Live to every emergency frequency. The alien nodded, understanding. The hunters monitor your communications. They would detect such a broadcast immediately. It might force them to retreat. Getting to the building would be dangerous. The hunters had them pinned down with nowhere to run. The open ground between their hiding place and the radio station offered no cover. I will create a diversion. Solaria said, You must run when I tell you. Do not stop, no matter what happens. Before Laura could protest, Solaria raised the disruption tool and fired a pulse of energy shot toward the craft, hitting it directly. The black oval shuddered, its systems momentarily failing. It began to drift erratically. Now run, Solaria shouted. Laura sprinted across the open, ground, her legs burning with effort. Behind her she heard energy weapons firing. Solaria was drawing their fire, allowing her to escape. She reached the building and yanked the door open, diving inside. Through the window she saw Solaria moving with incredible agility, dodging energy beams as she fired the disruption tool again and again. The alien was buying her time, but could not hold out forever. Laura turned to the broadcasting equipment, her hands shaking. She connected her camera, downloading the photos to the computer. The system was designed for emergency communications, able to broadcast on all frequencies simultaneously. She typed a brief message. Attention, all stations. Evidence of extraterrestrial craft attacking radio tower grid. Coordinates follow images attached. This is not a drill. Her finger hovered over the send button. Would this help or make things worse? If humanity learned about aliens this way, it could cause panic. But it might be their only chance. Outside, the hunters' craft had recovered from Solarius' attack. It was firing more aggressively now. The alien researcher was pinned down behind a small outcropping of rocks. Laura could see her blue skin singed in places from near misses. Laura hit send. The computer began transmitting the images and message to every emergency frequency. The screen confirmed the broadcast was live. Almost immediately, the hunter's craft stopped firing. Its sensors must have detected the transmission. Laura watched as it hovered motionless for a moment. Then, to her surprise, it began to rise, moving away from the mountain. Solaria took advantage of the moment, rushing toward the building. She burst through the door, her breathing ragged. The disruption tool was damaged, smoking slightly. In her hand, "The hunters are retreating," she said. "They cannot risk such exposure. They will report to their superiors. The damage is done." The black craft was now just a dot in the sky, moving rapidly away. "Did we win?" Laura asked, hardly believing it, for now Solaria replied, "But your broadcast has consequences. Your authorities will come to investigate. Your world now knows it is not alone." Laura hadn't considered the full implications. The photos would be analyzed by experts. Some might dismiss them as fake, but others would know the truth. Humanity would begin to realize they were not alone in the universe. "I had no choice," she said. Solaria placed a hand on her shoulder. "You made the right decision. The hunters would have killed us both and taken the evidence anyway. This way the revelation comes on your terms, not theirs." Outside, the air began to shimmer. A new sound filled the air, different from the hunter's craft. More musical somehow. A point of light appeared in the sky, growing larger. "People come," Solaria said, relief evident in her voice. The light resolved into a ship unlike the hunter's vessel. This one was sleek and beautiful, with curves that seemed to flow like water. It descended gracefully toward them, hovering above the radio tower. Laura stared in wonder. "Is that your ship?" "It is a rescue vessel," Solaria confirmed. "They will take us to safety. The hunters will not dare attack with a Lyran ship." Present, a beam of soft golden light extended from the ship, enveloping both of them. Laura felt a gentle tugging sensation. The ground fell away as they were drawn upward into the vessel. The interior was breathtaking. Walls that seemed alive with light, surfaces that flowed and changed, plants that grew in impossible ways, and other beings like Solaria, tall with blue skin and silver eyes. They greeted Solaria with musical sounds, the translator unable to convey the full meaning. One approached Laura, studying her with curiosity. "This is unprecedented," Solaria one said and translated English. "A human brought aboard our protocols. She saved my life." Solaria interrupted, "And her world is now aware of off-world beings. The hunters saw to that. She has earned our trust and protection. The other aliens seem to accept this. We detected your broadcast before the hunters could block it. Your authorities are already responding. Security forces are converging on the radio tower. The images are spreading quickly." Laura felt a strange mixture of emotions: relief at their escape, wonder at being aboard an alien ship, and concern for what would happen next. "Will there be panic?" she asked Will. "My world be ready for this knowledge." The alien who had spoken to Solaria turned to her. "Your species has long suspected it is not alone. Many of your people have hoped for such confirmation. The transition will be difficult but not impossible. We will help guide the process now that contact has been initiated." Solaria led Laura to a viewing port. The earth spread out below them, beautiful and blue. It looked so peaceful from this height, the borders and conflicts invisible. What happens now? Laura asked. Solaria gestured to the ship around them. My people will establish formal contact with your leaders. The hunters will be dealt with. Their violation of protected space will not go unpunished, and you stay. Solaria made that almost smile. I am a researcher. This is an unprecedented opportunity for study. The first official contact between our worlds. I will be part of the delegation. She hesitated, but my work will keep me busy. You will return to your life. Laura looked out at Earth again. Her life would never be the same, nothing. Would the world had changed forever because of their encounter? I want to help. She said, I know these mountains, these people. I can help your delegation understand humanity. Solaria seemed pleased. The transition will be easier with human guides, those who can bridge our worlds. We would welcome your assistance. The ship hummed around them, preparing to move. Laura realized they were heading to some designated meeting point, perhaps where human authorities were gathering to respond to the images she had sent. We should prepare you, Solaria said. Your knowledge will be valuable in the coming days, as the ship glided through Earth's atmosphere. Laura thought about everything that had happened since finding Solaria in her shed. Just days ago, she had been a wildlife photographer living alone in a cabin. Now she stood aboard an alien vessel about to help humanity face its new reality. She felt a strange sense of peace despite the uncertainty ahead. Humanity had always looked to the stars, wondering if they were alone. Now they had their answer, and Laura would help them understand it. Solaria stood beside her as they watched the Earth passing below them. The human and the alien, united by circumstances neither could have predicted. Their friendship had changed two worlds forever. The mountains where their adventure began receded in the distance as the ship carried them toward humanity's future. A future where Earth would take its place among the stars. For better or worse, everything had changed, and it had all started with an alien woman hiding in a cabin in the mountains. Laura smiled at Solaria, feeling a sense of purpose and wonder greater than anything she had known. Perhaps this was humanity's destiny all along, to join the greater community of worlds, to learn they were never truly alone in the vast universe. The ship accelerated, carrying them toward the new dawn that awaited.